All right, we're rolling.
Okay.
Well, yeah, my name's Kyle Ruggeri. I grew up in Webster. Wonderful home, wonderful family. I got an older brother, Nick, and he just had his first child, so I'm an uncle. My childhood was pretty much picture perfect. Parents always around, came to every softball game, every football game, parent-teacher conference. No trauma, nothing major happened. Everything was pretty good. In high school, middle school, I started drinking and I experimented with marijuana a little bit. And, right from the start, the first time I used, there was just a little part of me that really loved it, just escaping reality. So I could tell that there was a little bit of, I don't know if it's, the genetic aspect of it, but there was a little bit there that always liked to just be out of the norm. And, but it never got to a level that caused me consequences, really. I always got good grades. I always, always did very well in football, other sports, things like that. And as with football, my football career did start to take off. I did very well in high school. I got Monroe County Defensive Player of the Year for Section 5. That was in 2005-2006 season. I got All-State, and our team went to the state championship. We lost the state championship game, but it was a wonderful experience, wonderful game. And then I got an offer to go to Edinboro University of Pennsylvania and play college football. That was, wonderful. That was my dream come true. And so I went to Edinboro with two of my good buddies from Webster, and we all started out there as freshmen, and pretty much this is my dream. This is what I've always wanted. I finally got it. Right from the start in college, I had injuries, the typical, knee scrape, sprained ankle, things like that, but nothing major. But in high school, I suffered 2 concussions. It wasn't anything, I don't want to say major because it was major, but it wasn't anything that I was too concerned about. Freshman year in college, I got another one, and that's when it really started to, take a turn for the worse, I guess, to put it. Okay, this is serious. And my sophomore year in college, I suffered another concussion. So now I'm up to 4. It's really starting to have negative effects and consequences. And then to kind of put the icing on the cake, I suffered a 5th concussion off the field in a car accident. So the effects of all these in such a short period of time started to cause, mood swings, anger, all the typical post-concussive symptoms. And along with that, the second to last concussion, the one I got in football, I kind of hyperextended my neck, so I got a hit and, kind of jarred down. And I'm glad I'm not paralyzed, thank God. But I ended up going to see a doctor who was loosely affiliated with the team. They sent players there. He was a nice enough guy, but I got the gist that he was trying to just kind of get people in and out. And the first meeting I saw with this doctor, I pretty much left with more questions than answers. About a week later, I went back, still with pretty excruciating pain, and that's when he wrote me that first prescription for Percocet. I intended on taking it as prescribed, doing the right thing, getting back in the field. Within, I would say, about 2 months, I started taking the prescription. The whole thing was gone in 15 days. And I would, try to find it on the street. I would do what I had to do to get more. I also went back to this doctor who, he doubled it for me after that meeting. 3 months later, he doubled it again. And then 3 months after that, for the last time, he doubled it again. So now, I'm at 30 milligrams of oxycodone a day. I'm already going through that pretty quick. I never did anything to treat the pain properly, no physical therapy. I went to a couple sessions, but I couldn't afford it in college, and my parents are already, helping out to their max too. So I came home and I saw a came home back here to Rochester, saw a doctor who's a family friend, and she was pretty much shocked I was getting that level of painkillers. And the doctor I had in Pennsylvania closed his practice and moved to Ohio. So now I have nobody to give me a prescription. I'm already physically and mentally addicted. I stopped playing football at this point because my head you just couldn't handle another concussion. And my life just kind of started spiraling out of control. It was I had no one to give me a prescription legally, so I started, seeking it out in the street. I would routinely drive back to Rochester, get pills here because I felt comfortable, I guess. I trusted some people I knew here since I was younger versus Pennsylvania. And, to be quite honest, it was cheaper. And luckily, I did end up making it through the rest of college, but it was a struggle. My friends, all my roommates down there, they noticed socially I wasn't around. Pretty much I'd lock myself in my room with my dog and, I would get high. Then I started hanging out with some people down there who were, less than, they're just terrible, bad characters, bad people around town who were known as the druggies. After college, I came back home to Rochester here, and it was just a chaos. It was job to job, fired, stealing from my parents, whatever the case may be. So we tried the geographical cure, which, as an addict, kind of ignorant on the issues, we didn't know much better. My parents didn't, have never went through it. So I moved to Baltimore with a couple buddies from college. And I was sober for a couple months, but just like anything, I didn't treat it. So it just slowly started to progress again. And this is when I started to do heroin. That was down in Baltimore. Heroin was everywhere. It was available. It was around. I was snorting it, but it was just cheaper and easier to get. That trip to Baltimore ended with a suicide attempt on New Year's Eve. I was in Baltimore, and I got so drunk and high that I literally jumped off the Baltimore harbor. The water was about 33 degrees. I started floating out. My buddy jumped in, and he was holding me up until the cops could get there. And, the fire department, somebody said they airlifted. I don't know if they did or didn't, but I got a bill for it anyway. But they pulled me out of the water. I woke up the next day in Johns Hopkins Hospital. I didn't remember a thing. Somebody got, a bunch of it on tape, which wasn't fun to watch, but I ended up, that was January 1st, 2013. I moved home about a week later back here to Rochester, and I was with a buddy of mine. We were getting high, and I did about $80 worth of heroin, and he did about 20. I snorted it, he injected his. He was way higher than me. That's when I made what I call the worst decision of my life, and then I said, screw it, I'm going to do that. He tried to talk me out of it for about 10 minutes, and I said I was going to do it whether you help me or not. So I did it, and the next 3 months of my life were an absolute disaster. Stealing, lying, cheating, manipulating, whatever I could do to get that next fix. Fired, late everywhere, everything. And then crime routinely, unfortunately became part of my life. I know a lot of addicts, with female addicts, a lot of times that leads to sex type things or prostitution, and with male addicts it leads to crime, and that's what it was for me. That ended on May 18, 2013. I got arrested in the act of committing a burglary in Brighton, and I went downtown, and then the next morning they charged me with 6 other burglaries that I had committed around Rochester. And from that day, May 18th, I ended up spending the next 3.5 years in prison. That was my sentence. The first 9 months when I was in jail, I was sober, not by choice, just because there was no drugs there. And then when I got transferred to prison, it was filled with drugs. I mean, like an astonishing amount. So I spent my first year in prison, it's cliche to say, but like Goodfellas. I mean, we, ate pasta, did drugs, and joked around and worked out. It was a big joking game to me. Then I got caught roughly a year into that sentence, failed the drug test, and out of my final year and a half in prison, I spent 12 months and 25 days in solitary. And that was by far the worst, most traumatic experience in my life. Solitary is not where you send, a drug addict. It's not where you send somebody taking depression medications. It's just, it's pure torture. So that, and the worst part was I would be sent to solitary for using drugs, and then the second I would get out, I would seek drugs out in general population again because I was just, suicidal, depressed, and at the wit's end. The only thing I knew how to cope was just to get high again, even though I knew it could send me right back. But I got released from prison on November 15, 2016, and I was going to outpatient, but I wasn't serious. I was just kind of going through the motions. I ended up relapsing, and for about 2.5 months I used here back in Rochester again, and that culminated with on March 1st, 2017, my parole officer violated me. I got sent to Willard Drug Treatment Center, which is like a boot camp type thing for parolees. And it was at Willard, it was right before I went to Willard in the county jail, where I had a phone call with my parents where they pretty much told me, "You're done. We love you, but there's nothing else we could do. We can't have you around. You're not going to be in your brother's life. You're not going to be there for his kids." Just a whole conversation that broke me down, and that was my rock bottom. I decided then and there, I can't do this. I don't want to do it anymore. And I completed Willard successfully, got out, and I've been doing well ever since. Very involved in 12-step programs, AA, NA. I try to get to Ruggeri as often as I can and do wonderful sober activities with them. And then last year, I was having a little bit of a, crisis in my sobriety, where I knew I was on the road to relapse. But one thing I always knew that helped me get through tough times was helping other people. So I, just kind of, I said, I'm going to put my story out there. And I started a little website. I named it Sober Dogs because my dogs are a huge part of my life, always have been. But I just kind of write articles and put stories and stuff out there about my sobriety, hoping it can help somebody. And it's helped me stay sober, which is wonderful, and was my main goal. But through social media and stuff, it's wonderful too. I had a gentleman reach out to me a couple weeks ago from Florida, like, hey, I saw this, and just want to let you know that I appreciate that. It's very motivating, and I've been having cravings. Any advice? And I got to talk to this guy, and I still do talk to him, and stuff like that, connecting and reaching out with other people, personally to me is what keeps me sober, what helps me stay sober every day. And besides that, my support is my biggest help staying sober. My parents, wonderful. My brother, grandparents. I do the 12-step program, like I said, so I have people in there. I do have a sponsor. I follow, that type of recovery program, and that's really the key to me. And I just take it a day at a time.
Awesome.
Okay. As far as the Marchman's Act or Casey's Law for the involuntary treatment, I think it would be good if it were, shorter term. So if a parent wanted to have their child kind of involuntarily sent to treatment, I'd be for 2 weeks up to a month maximum, but 3 to 6 months to me is too much. In my experience, an addict will not get sober unless they want to and are ready to. So a 3 to 6 month involuntary treatment, if I didn't want to do it, I would come out. Not only would I get high right away, but I'd have resentments against my parents and probably even, create a pretty big gap in the relationship. Like I said earlier, I did 9 months straight sober in jail, and the second I got a chance to get high, I did, just because I wasn't ready and I didn't want it. I believe this epidemic really got started with, a perfect storm of things between doctors trying to treat pain. I know in the 90s, pain was considered like the new thing that should be treated. Prescription drug companies being able to push their new drugs. The internet boom and social media, I think a lot of people are kind of look at other people's lives and feel like they're missing out, they don't have something. And then one big thing for me has always been the lack of accountability. I feel like in the last maybe 20, 30 years, there's been this push of kind of, it's not our fault, it's not the kid's fault, it's not the parents' fault, and even like at school, children will get in trouble, but it's because of this, or they had that, or they didn't get this, and it's like, there's no accountability. So I feel like a lot of people haven't had to face their own trials and stuff in life, and because of that, kind of haven't been prepared for the real world. And that's where the allure of taking drugs or taking prescription painkillers, which just kind of cloud reality and put you on cloud 9, really comes in.
This guy wrote a book, his name's Charles Murray. It's called the Undoing of America or something like that. And he said that it was because that's what social capital is. There's no social capital anymore. There's no accountability.
Yeah.
And he said if you have parents that don't care, kids that don't care, no one cares about anything, it's like society's going to unravel at the seams.
Yeah. It's really wild. It's
going to get worse too.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Well, and then you're going to have too, this whole generation, I don't want to say generation, but whole group of people that are going to be in recovery, and it's going to be, the number's going to be in the millions. Hopefully they could stay in recovery, but it is a day-to-day thing. So who knows where that's going to go. And businesses I know try to jump in and capitalize on it. Some of them with, not with the best intentions. So
yeah.
If I was to give anyone advice on how to overcome their addiction, I would say, connect, reach out. Whether that's through a 12-step program, which I personally are a big advocate for, a recovery type program. I know there's even like yoga classes for people in recovery, church groups, just whatever kind of suits your recovery, reach out and connect, because no matter what you have went through, somebody else out there has went through it or something very similar that you can relate to. So there's always somebody willing to help you, to reach out, to give you advice, and be there to kind of lean on. And the part is, I didn't really remember it. So the reason I knew what I was doing is, when I woke up in the hospital, it was like maybe I got in a fight, maybe I just fell. But then I watched that video the next night, and I saw what I did, and I started to remember, like, I just wanted to be done. Yeah, it was about a 30-foot fall. I hit my head on the way down. My buddy, thank God, he jumped in. You can ask my dad too.
Did you jump or fall?
I jumped.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you remember making the decision to jump?
Vaguely. I saw my body language on the video, and I knew it wasn't a fall. It was a clear intention. But and my buddy, the one who jumped in, he called my dad. He said, I don't know what to do, and then he threw his cell phone down and jumped in after me, and my dad could hear people talking, and he's up here in Rochester, and we're in Baltimore, and he describes it, he just breaks down in tears. He's like, what the hell am I going to do? I'm here in Rochester. My son's best friend just calls me and says he jumped in, he's going to die. What do I do? Like, yeah, it was brutal. I never experienced any like mistreatment and treatment. In prison, definitely. treatment they have in prison is, I don't know how to describe it. It's tough. They try to do their best, but unfortunately many of the inmates don't want to take it seriously, which results in many of the counselors don't want to take it seriously. So it's just kind of, I don't know, almost an optional thing, and even the people that are required just kind of float through it. But there's a lot of mistreatment in prison as far as solitary and, you know, how that stuff goes. But I don't know, do you want me to get like deeper into that? I don't know how deep. Okay.
We're doing this thing with this one kid who he was mistreated in treatment.
Oh no, I'm sorry, no, not. If I had to say something that's really not helping the opioid problem, I think just locking up addicts, because, you know, doesn't really help. I understand if somebody breaks the law, they have to go, you know, to jail. They have to, you know, face their consequences. But there's a big difference if you bust somebody, you know, with 20 bags and they got needle marks, and you bust somebody with 40 bags and they're a dealer. So I think that line has to be drawn, because the person with 20 bags who's an addict, I've went and bought way more than that just for myself before. Treatment is a lot better than prison, because it's just drugs in prison, and most people end up coming out harder and more traumatized than when they go in. So one thing I think would really help the opioid problem is getting rid of the stigma about the medications too. I know there's a lot of people that are kind of wary about Suboxone, or even naltrexone, or I'm sorry, I'm forgetting the name, the Narcan. But these things need to be available and ready available when an addict is ready to get clean. You know, when I was ready to get clean, there's a small window. If somebody gives me $5 in 5 minutes, I'm running out and I'm getting high again. So if that stuff can be available, that really can help. Some legislation I think that could really help the problem is, you know, loosening up the restrictions on doctors to be able to give out this life-saving treatment, whether it be Narcan or Suboxone or whatever it may be. I think the community can help this problem too by getting involved. Most people I notice don't get involved until it's too late, meaning somebody in their own family has died or is now, you know, in active addiction. So I think the community's got to get involved, and like we were talking about earlier, accountability. You know, parents, be there for your kids, parent your child. You know, community, get involved in the community with or without addiction, churches, parks, events. Just be a community again and help each other out, help your neighbor out. Unfortunately, I don't think this trend is going to slow down anytime soon. I think it's going to definitely get worse before it gets better. I would just, if somebody in active addiction, if I could give them any advice, I would say be open-minded. If somebody offers to take you to treatment or an AA meeting or something, just go, you know, listen, take what you can. You don't have to commit that second, but be open-minded and be willing to get help. If I could just add anything, it would be to the community out there, you know, who may not have a family member in addiction. Try to, you know, understand it a little bit better. Try to do some research. I consider myself, you know, a pretty decent person, but when I'm under the influence of drugs, it just changes everything. And I know a lot of these addicts out there right now, it's not an intentional to hurt people, to damage property, to cause pain. That doesn't excuse them, but at the same time, it is a real disease. So really just try to learn about the issue. I think that would be the best advice to, you know, people who maybe want to get involved but don't know, or, you know, are just, you know, curious about it, I guess.